Okay, here we are at Notre-Dame de Paris. It's very important to say Notre-Dame de Paris because you have to make a difference between other churches named Notre Dame. There's other Notre Dames in Paris, there's other Notre Dames in France, there's other Notre Dames in the world. It simply means Our Lady. As you can see, if you grew up around Catholics, there's a lot of churches named Our Lady. So it's very important to say Notre Dame de Paris. Now this is a cathedral. The word cathedral comes from the Greek word cathedra, which means seat. That means that the bishop has his seat is here in Paris. So it makes it even more important. Another reason that Notre Dame is important is because it is the most famous example of Gothic architecture. It's also the second most visited cathedral in the world. Second to Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City. The third most visited is St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. And the fourth is Sacré-Cœur in Montmartre. So those are very visited places. So you have two in Paris. So Notre Dame was began in 1163 and then finished in 1345. So that means it took 200 years to build, about 200 years to build the whole structure. When they built it with back where we're standing first, the main hall and the choir, and that was because once they built that, then they could start having masses. The second part would have been the two towers. The two towers were finished in 1250. So that just gives you a good example of how long it took for them to finish the details. About 100 years. And as you can see, there's lots of details on there. Yeah, and if you go up, you'll see even more. You'll see this giant line here. It looks intimidating. If you guys have not been inside, or you're planning on to go inside, the line actually moves pretty quickly. Don't be intimidated. Get in line. Go inside. It's really an incredible place to see. If you guys want to go up in the towers, that's a separate line around the corner. That's 10 euros to go up. That line does take a little bit longer, but it is well worth it. The views up there are really good. Some of the best in the city, maybe not the best. I have some other personal favorites of views in the city. But what you will see up there is some pretty interesting stuff. You'll get a good look at the bells. In this tower, there are 4 bells, and they ring on the hour, every hour. And then the other, there is one bell, and the name of that bell is Emmanuel, and that rings on major holidays. So you can get a good look at the bells. You'll also get a good look at the gargoyles, or what we would call gargoyles. Now, excuse me for being a little pedantic, but it's not just gargoyles up there. We would commonly refer to all the statues up there as gargoyles, but they're actually either known as grotesques or chimeras. The gargoyles are actually the specific ones that are leaning out. They're actually the ones that help drain the roof. When it rains, you'll see that water will come out of their throats. The root of the word gargoyle is the same as the root word for garganta in Spanish, or gorge in French, or gargle in English, literally meaning throat. So yes, their throats help drain the roof when it rains. So that's gargoyle. Now, if you guys want to see some good views, the view from up there is a little bit more limited. You do get to see the Ile de la Cité, but for me personally, there are 3 really good places to get a view of the city. One of those, of course, is the Eiffel Tower, but the Eiffel Tower has a couple of drawbacks. It is the most famous place to see, and of course, everybody wants to go up there, but it kind of lost a little of its charm when it got the security fence around it, personally, I think, because you can't just go under it and just take a look. You literally have to go in with the tickets. That's one of the problems. The other problem, I think, is that there's just massive crowds around there. It's not the most tranquil place in the world. And the other is when you're on the Eiffel Tower, it's impossible to see the Eiffel Tower. So there are some better places, I think, too, on top of Montmartre, by the Sacré-Cœur, sitting on the steps, getting a bottle of wine, eating a baguette, eating some cheese. Great way to get a good view and have a nice evening. But my favorite place to see the sunset is actually the ugliest building in the city. It's Montparnasse Tower. you're literally above everywhere else. Back in the 60s and 70s, they built this tower. They wanted to make a financial district in the south of the city, but everybody in Paris hated this building. So unfortunately for them, and fortunately for us, they only built one, but it is the highest building in the city. And so far they haven't torn it down because I've heard and read that there's actually asbestos in the building, so they don't want to tear it down because it would be a environmental problem. But you're safe to go up. It's a really good view. Best in the city, 360 degrees. But more on this building, just to point out a few things. So this is a Gothic style cathedral, like I said. What does it mean, Gothic? Gothic has three architectural elements that are most important about it. What you can see from out here is the pointed dome. The pointed dome is actually really important because it takes a lot of the weight of the structure. This is different from the earlier type of church called Romanesque, which has just a regular dome. They can't build them this tall. Another important aspect is the rib vaulting inside the cathedral. It's just fun. I'd have to show it to you anyway. But what you can see from outside is if you're on the other side, you will see the flying buttresses. This is really important for Gothic architecture because it helps. It's literally holding the whole place up. This also allows you to build taller, and it also allows you to put windows in. So another very important part to Gothic architecture. But in our minds, we have Gothic architecture as being something dark, or we think of teenagers, and we think of black hair, and we think of black lipstick, black fingernails, blah blah blah. You also think of these dark buildings. Actually, the architects of Gothic would have wanted exactly the opposite. This is actually a time for light. They would want you to go inside the cathedral and feel like you're in the city of God here on earth. They wanted you to be awestruck. They wanted this to be that biggest building in the medieval city, and obviously it would have been. Right where we're standing would have been a medieval village. It was actually taken away in the 1850s. So up into the 1850s, this was old medieval houses. Another thing is, you got to imagine back then this would have been painted a lot of different colors, and that would have made it feel a lot different. It would have made it feel a lot more alive, a lot more full of light. So remember, the Gothic time period is actually about God being inside. It's about the celestial. It's about looking upwards. It's about light. It's more about positivity, you know. So keep that in mind when you're looking. Keep that in mind when you're looking at these Gothic cathedrals. Just to point out a few things on the outside that are interesting. The main portal is the portal of the Last Judgment. So you actually have Jesus on top of there with an angel holding a scale, judging whether people are going to heaven or hell. On the left, you have people looking up. Those are the saints. They're going to heaven. If you look at the right, you'll see everybody looking down, and they're looking towards hell. The portal on my left would be the portal of Saint Anne. It's a picture of Saint Anne and White King getting married, and also Mary and Joseph. On the right, you have that's the portal of the Virgin. So you have a picture of Mary dying. It was very important too in Gothic times, in medieval times, that the buildings say a story, because a lot of people couldn't read back then. So they got most of the biblical verse from looking at the stained glass windows and the stories in the stonework. So very, very important. We understand that all these are stories. So what you're actually looking at right now is not the original, and is far from it. This is actually a recreation. During the Revolution, if you have any knowledge of the Revolution, you will know that revolutionaries hated the monarchy and hated the church. So when they came around the city, they were looking to destroy things. They came and they wanted to destroy the church. So they came and they saw these 28 kings right here. Those are actually the 28 kings of Judah, but the revolutionaries didn't really do their homework well, and they thought those were the 28 kings of France. So of course they pulled them down, decapitated them, and cut off their noses. If you want to see the originals, you can go to the Musée de Cluny, where they actually have the originals. These are actually recreations. A man named Viollet le Duc, he redid the facade, he rebuilt the kings, and he actually inserted himself into one of them. And he also redid the spire. So he did a lot of work on the cathedral itself. So yes, it almost got completely destroyed during the Revolution. They redesignated it to the Temple of Reason. They took the Virgin Mary statues down and put statues of the Lady Liberty. So that's Notre Dame in a nutshell. So where we're gonna go, just follow me, we're gonna go this way.